Welcome to Notable Approvals. I'm attorney Amanda Shaffer. Today we have another exciting case to talk about. And this case is a K-1 fiancé visa with an approved waiver of inadmissibility or 601 waiver for fraud and misrepresentation. So the beneficiary is a native and citizen of Ecuador. Her fiancé is the petitioner. He is a U.S. citizen who was born in Ecuador and immigrated to the U.S. in 1995. It's actually a very cute story that the petitioner went back to Ecuador, I think in 2016 for vacation, and reconnected with the beneficiary who he's actually known since they were both kids. And they kind of hit it off this time around, and they continued to talk, and a few months later, they met in Mexico for a vacation. They continued to talk regularly, FaceTime, all that stuff, until the following year when the petitioner went back down to Ecuador and proposed, and the beneficiary said yes. So he came back up to the US and said he wanted to file a fiancé visa petition for his fiancée. And that's what we did. And the K-1 visa was approved, or the petition was approved. And then because the beneficiary was in Ecuador, the petition approval got transferred to the National Visa Center and then to the Guayaquil Embassy in Ecuador. The beneficiary the petitioner flew down to Ecuador to go with her for the interview. And she went to the interview at the embassy and they denied the visa. And they said the reason they denied the visa was because she committed fraud and misrepresentation with respect to an earlier application filed by her ex-husband. So they were obviously very devastated, and the petitioner came back to the US, and we told him, you need to file this I-601 waiver. And I talked to the beneficiary. I asked her, well, what happened? What happened with your previous marriage? So she explained to me that 2006, she was 22 years old, and her parents were pressuring her to marry this US citizen so she can have a better life in the US. She couldn't get a job in Ecuador. Things were pretty tough. And she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had no choice. So she went along with the scheme. Her dad took care of all the filings and everything. She went to the interview at the embassy with the US citizen, and it didn't go well, which isn't surprising because it usually doesn't go well when the marriage isn't real. At the end of the interview, the embassy said that they needed more information about the marriage. And then after that, the beneficiary, she kind of felt uneasy. She never really was thrilled with the plan. And after that experience, she was like, I can't go through with this. And she cut it off. The US citizen wanted to continue with it, but she told him, no, I'm not doing it. And that was it. And then 10 years later, she meets the petitioner again, and they reconnect. So when we first found out we needed to do this waiver, I asked her to write a statement I told her, look, we're going to need an affidavit. The affidavit is going to be the most important thing here. We need you to explain what you did and why you did it, and how you're sorry now, and how your fiance needs you in the US. So she wrote her first draft and sends it to me and doesn't really explain it. And I'm like, look, the only way to get this approved is to be completely honest. Exactly what you explained to me what happened, I want you to write down. And it's okay. They already know it happened, and you're going to hurt yourself if you're not honest about it. Just tell them. And so she was reluctant. She was a little scared about it, but essentially that is what she did. And spoiler alert, it worked. But that's not the only reason it worked. We had to, of course, show that her fiance, who was a US citizen, would suffer an extreme hardship if she could not come to the US. We also, whenever we're doing these extreme hardship waivers, it's not just about her being able to come to the US, but that our client or the petitioner could not go to Ecuador and be with her because he'd suffer an extreme hardship. And we used the totality of the circumstances approach, which means there wasn't one major factor that we leaned on here to show his extreme hardship, we gave a nice big picture of everything, and totaling everything together really showed that he would suffer extreme hardship. And I will give you a quick overview about what type of things we talked about. So as I said, my client, the petitioner, has been here since 1995, and he has family members here, his mom and his sisters, and he has been in the same, he's lived in the same New York City community since his entry in 95. His family members are all citizens and permanent residents. He had some health issues, nothing that was so major. And I will say from other cases, I know that the health system, at least prior to coronavirus, I can't speak for what it is right now, but in Ecuador, the health system is actually pretty good. So you can't hang your hat on a health condition when you're dealing with a client from Ecuador. But our client, he had some a mixture of health issues, including major depression, alcohol use disorder, and the biggest health issue was a hernia. And he needed surgery, there was no question, but he couldn't get the surgery until his fiance was able to come to the US, because he had to be off his feet for 6 weeks and there was no one that could take care of him. Excuse me. So that was one of the things we looked at, was his mental and physical health. We then talked about family separation and financial impact. Now, like I said, he has family up here now, and he actually lives with his mom and 2 sisters. They live there rent-free. He owns the house. He contributes to his sister's college education, and his father had passed away when he was very young, and he's been like the patriarch to this family. So we made sure we put in evidence from his other family members saying, like, we can't, we're not going to make it without him. We'll have nowhere to live. And we showed the community ties, the fact that he owned the house. And then in addition, with the financial impact, he has his own business that he started, and the business does pretty well, and he's a contractor. And we had to show that, look, if he went back to Ecuador, he's not going to be able to be a contractor there and make the same money. And part of the reason is we found evidence that it's very corrupt, this whole system for getting permits and stuff to do the contract work. And the minimum wage is much lower in Ecuador. So this essentially means he'd have to sell his house, meaning then his family would have nowhere to live as well. We also looked at his disruption of educational opportunities, because this client, he actually went back to high school after many years to get his GED. And then he got accepted into college, and he was about to start. And this is when his fiance, it was around the same time that at her interview, she was denied. And that had a profound impact on his mental health, but so he couldn't start school right away. He was like, kind of felt like his life was on hold and wanted to wait until she got here and had a surgery, and he still plans to go to college. But it's really a story of American dream, how this petitioner had came here and, started his life over and started his family life over, got everything all together, owns a home now, and all he wanted to do was bring his fiance over. And the last thing 2 more things we looked at was the fact that the beneficiary actually got pregnant, and they were excited to have a child. And then unfortunately she had a miscarriage. And that had a profound impact on the petitioner's mental health as well. The last thing we talked about was the beneficiary's good moral character. Other than this fraud and misrepresentation issue that happened, again, when she was young, she had no criminal history, no other immigration violations. She had applied once for a visitor visa, got denied for the same reason, didn't further pursue it. So ultimately, she made one mistake in her life. We said, look, she made the mistake. This is why she did it. She feels terrible about it. She's done nothing wrong since. And this fiance is going to really suffer an extreme hardship if she can't come to the US and be with him. So it actually only took 5 months to get approved, the waiver, which is amazing, especially right now during coronavirus. And we actually have to check to make sure the embassy is open down there so that we can get her here as soon as possible. But we're very excited and looking forward to the next few steps in her journey. that is all for notable approvals. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. I think I named all the places you can find us. We'll be back tomorrow with another exciting notable approval to talk about. And, you know, if you go to our Facebook, YouTube pages and stuff, you can also find some other ones that we talked about. So thank you again for watching and have a great day.